There was a lot of hope for the AFC South heading into the 2024 season. The Houston Texans were coming off of a tremendous year in which they went from the number 2 overall pick in the 2023 draft to the divisional round of the playoffs, and the Indianapolis Colts went 9-8 and nearly won the division with Gardner Minshew as their quarterback for most of the year. Jacksonville obviously had a tough end of the 2023 season as they were 8-3 at a point before losing 5 of their final 6 games to miss out on the playoffs entirely. Yes, it was a tough end of the year, but entering 2024, they had a 24-year-old quarterback along with a first-round receiver and made improvements on the roster to signify they would be a really competitive team this year and a difficult team to beat on any given Sunday. Tennessee also had some flashes from their rookie quarterback in Will Levis, most notably the Falcons game, but the offensive line was a big problem and so was the receiving core. But here we are in the middle of December and the future of the AFC South looks bleak. You can make an argument for each team's future for various reasons, but with where this division is collectively, I have a lot of concerns moving forward. And in today's video, we're going to break down why the future of the AFC South is very concerning. And there is a lot to dive into in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video with the Indianapolis Colts. The 2024 Colts season can best be described in one word, and that's a roller coaster. The highs have been incredibly high, while the lows have been some of the lowest lows an organization can have. Anthony Richardson can make plays that maybe 1 or 2 other players in the history of the league can make, then he'll follow it up with an interception you would hate to see from a collegiate quarterback, let alone a starting quarterback in the NFL. There was the famous checkout play from Anthony Richardson in the Texans game in which the Colts lost by 3 points. Joe Flacco started the ensuing 2 games against the Vikings and Bills, in which Indy lost both games and had a total of 6 turnovers, and in a 2-game span in which they put up just 33 points. And even 7 of those points in the Vikings game came from the defense. I have been a big Anthony Richardson defender, and I will be the first to say his play on the field looks a lot better than what the numbers actually do, and we can call it what it is. The pure passing numbers from Anthony Richardson are ugly. Period. But what concerns me about the Colts' future is how some of these situations were handled throughout the 2024 season. Everyone knew entering the year that Anthony Richardson needed time and needed to play in the NFL to, actually develop. And everyone is usually on board with a team going through a rebuild and a team going through tough times until it's actually time to go through tough times. Not every team is the Detroit Lions, who started the 2022 season with a 1-6 record and have been nearly unstoppable since then. There were talks of Shane Steichen being on the hot seat because there was a part of the locker room that was basically saying, I'm not here to go through a rebuild with a young quarterback, play Joe Flacco who gives us a better chance to win. And this is my biggest concern with Indy moving forward. I think Shane Steichen is a good coach, and I think there is a really good chance this team wins 9 games this year, if not 10. That would put Shane Steichen at 18-16 through 2 years, or 19-15, and with the 2 rosters he's had since being named the head coach back in 2023. Personally, I think that's overachieving with what Shane Steichen has been dealt and with all of the adversity he's been dealt in the process. But I also have a lot of concerns with players they've paid on their roster. Jonathan Taylor has touched the football a lot since his time at Wisconsin, and from his true freshman season all the way back in 2017 through his second season in the NFL in 2021, he had over 1,600 touches in a 5-year span. The Colts can get out of his contract after the 2025 season, but I do think a slight regression is coming, and his yards per carry has slowly decreased over the years too. Obviously, it shouldn't be expected to do what he did in 2021 every single year, but the yards per carry decrease is concerning. Michael Pittman has also been a disappointment in 2024, as after having an 1,100-yard year in 2023, he is on pace for under 750 yards in 2024, which is certainly not what the Colts had in mind when they gave him a 3-year, $70 million contract this past offseason. My other big concern with the Colts is when you look at their losses, which are to teams like Green Bay, and I would argue this was worse because it was against Malik Willis, but losing to teams like the Texans, Vikings, Bills, and Lions, even if Indy improves in 2025, which they very much can, I go back to the question of, are they going to be able to go into a Baltimore, Kansas City, or a Buffalo and win with the season on the line? Just once, by the way, much less in consecutive weeks. And I think a lot of the Colts' future success relies heavily, and I mean heavily, upon the development between year 2 and year 3 of Anthony Richardson, because with where the rest of this roster currently is, I have a lot of concerns. And the football season is heating up, so make sure to grab your favorite team's jersey and some snacks and head to the couch for another Sunday of action-packed football. I have teamed up with DraftKings and you can get even closer to the action. Right now, all new DraftKings customers who bet just $5 will get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code ANALYSIS. And don't forget to stay in on the action, use your $150 in bonus bets on DraftKings Same Game Parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. You can combine multiple bets together from the same game, and if sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry, you can still join in all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. If you are like me and don't enjoy going outside when it's cold and are watching all of the games anyway, why not spice it up and give it a shot? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, and new customers who use my code ANALYSIS and bet just $5 on any wager will get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. That's promo code ANALYSIS, and a big thank you to DraftKings, an official partner of the NFL, for sponsoring today's video. Next up is the Tennessee Titans, and their future scares me for a couple of reasons. Right now, they are 3-10, coming off of a 10-6 loss to the Mac Jones-led Jags, and their final 4 games are home against the Bengals, at Indy, at Jacksonville, and home against the Texans. My biggest fear for the Titans is that they win the Jacksonville game, and you never know with the other division games, and they already beat the Texans once this year, and as we have said multiple times in the channel before, and will continue to say, you never know with division games because these teams know each other best. The absolute worst case scenario, and I don't think this will happen, at least in the worst case scenario, is that they win all 3 division games and finish the year 6-11, and what would be the worst part about that for the Titans is there's been a lot of bad football across the league in 2024, and very rarely is the league as polar opposite as it is, where you have multiple double-digit win teams at this point, like the Chiefs, Lions, Eagles, and Vikings, and obviously that affects the draft order then on the back end. Then you have a bunch of bad teams like the Jags, for example, and the Raiders and the Giants, and there's a lot of 2 and 3 win teams right now where if the Titans finish 5-12, they could potentially have the 8th or 9th overall pick, where in most years that's usually the 4th or 5th overall pick. And in the 2025 draft, if you guys are not aware, if you guys have not put on your scouting cap yet, the 2025 class is not the best, and it's certainly less talented than the 2024 class, and the difference between the 4th or 5th overall pick in 2025 and the 8th or 9th is pretty substantial in this class. So there's a lot going against Tennessee in the final couple of games, and for their sake, I really hope they lose the final 4 games, but I do think they will beat Jacksonville when these teams play again, and again, I wouldn't doubt that they beat Indy or Houston to ultimately finish 5-12, but their future worries me for several reasons, and it starts with the quarterback position. Will Levis at times flashes like few other quarterbacks, and if there is one hot take that I have from this video, it's that I do think Will Levis can eventually be a guy. I don't think it's going to be in Tennessee, because this situation is pretty bleak at the moment. I mean, his top receivers are Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Chigakonkwo, Nick Westbrook-Akine, and Tony Pollard, and the offensive line is pretty underwhelming. Yes, J.C. Latham has played well, but Peter Skoronski hasn't exactly been worth a top 15 pick. Lloyd Cushenberry is unfortunately done for the year, and right tackle Nicholas Petit-Frere has been one of the worst tackles in the league, and the situation all around is pretty bad. But with the resurgences of guys like Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold this year, I do think Will Levis can be a guy elsewhere. I just don't think it's going to be in Tennessee. And the Titans have a lot of holes on offense. Calvin Ridley, to me, is a really solid, really high-end wide receiver too, but he's not a wide receiver 1. You're never going to confuse him with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, and you get the point. And that's kind of a problem because the Titans are in this no man's land where I don't think they are close to a bottom 3 or 4 roster in the NFL, and that's kind of what I want to be one of the takeaways to be, is that the Titans are a bad team, yes, but they're not bottom 3 or 4 bad. And what I think also has to be remembered is this team is only a couple of plays away from, instead of being 3-10, maybe they're 6-7, maybe they're 7-6, and that's what I want to be remembered when we discuss the Tennessee Titans. But the thing is how do you take the next step? How do you go from 3-10 to probably finishing the year 5-12 to going 9-8 and then going 10-7? And what I worry about with the Titans is whenever they take these next steps, they're inevitably going to improve the team. But the one thing that worries me with the Titans is, are they ever going to repeat the success with Brian Callahan and company that they had with Mike Vrabel over the past couple of years? In a couple of years span, are they going to go to the AFC Championship game and then win the AFC South in back-to-back years, including a number 1 seed? I personally doubt it, it, and it's because the Titans are in this no man's land where instead of being just above mediocrity, they're just below mediocrity, although I think they do have a lot of talent on the roster. They just haven't been able to achieve it. And I also have concerns with head coach Brian Callahan, as this team plays incredibly undisciplined at times, and to me that's a major red flag for a team moving forward. Whether a team is 3-10 or whether a team is 10-3, if you play undisciplined to the level that the Titans do, that to me is not a good sign of things to come under the current regime and current leadership. Now, I will say entering 2025 that with how bad their special teams play has been, it can really only go up in 2025, and I think they will win a couple of more games really by default, but I think they're going to replace Will Levis this offseason, or at least try their hardest to replace Will Levis, and also improve the offensive line. But for me, it's really going to come down to, is that enough to beat any of the premier teams when it matters? And to me, the answer is no. I don't think the Titans are going to be a legit team in 2025, and then at that point, you're going to have a head coach on the hot seat entering year 3, because Brian Callahan will presumably have a losing record entering year 3. Even if they go 9-8 next year, he'll have the long-term record of the 2024 season, in which they inevitably finish 7 or 8 games below 500. When you look at the 2 to 3 year plan for the Tennessee Titans, I see a lot more bad than good. I hope I'm wrong on this, because I think Titans fans deserve a lot better than what they've seen on the field this year, and their team is a lot better than a 3-10 record would suggest, but I have a lot of concerns with their future at this point in time. The Houston Texans are up, and out of the 4 teams in the AFC South, I think their future is the brightest, and I don't think that's a particularly hot take. But I don't think the Texans' future is as bright as some people want to make it out to be for a couple of reasons. Whenever a player like CJ Stroud has a rookie season like he had in 2023, it's natural to get caught up in the hype and to project the best case scenario. It was easy to sit back from February through August of 2024 and basically say he's going to build on what was a 4,100-yard, 23 passing touchdown season with another year of continuity between himself, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and of course, offensive coordinator and play caller Bobby Slowick. And CJ put up those numbers in 15 games, as he missed a few games last year for those who may not remember. And then you add in Joe Mixon, who has been a lot better than I thought he would have been, and Stephon Diggs via a trade, and the expectations were enormous. The expectations were never fair for the 2024 Texans offense, because to a lot of people, it was now time for CJ to put up a 4,500 or even 5,000 yard season, along with 35 passing touchdowns, and to lead this team to 12 or 13 wins in an AFC Championship game appearance. I put out a video this past offseason that basically said to slow down on the Texans hype train, because there's a lot that can go wrong, and a lot has in 2024. This isn't to take a victory lap as much as it is to acknowledge the 2024 Texans are a perfect example of how hard it is to win in the NFL and win consistently. Ask any Texans fan and they'll tell you that they are frustrated with Bobby Slowick, and that's another thing that never gets discussed when bringing up teams' futures, is not only can players not live up to enormous expectations, but this also applies to play callers, and Slowick is a perfect example. This team has 3 400-yard games in all of 2024, and they all happened in the first 5 games of the year. I don't think the Texans are doomed by any means, but I have a lot of concerns with the offensive line moving forward and how they're going to fix it entering 2025. Building an offensive line isn't easy, and they selected guard Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M back in 2022, and he's only played in 24 of 47 possible games, and when he's played, he's been bad. And unfortunately, I would say this is a draft bust at this point in time. The Texans also do not have as much cap space as you would think in 2025, and it's because they went all in this past offseason. They traded for Stephon Diggs, they signed Azeez Al-Shaair and Denico Autry in free agency, they're paying Dalton Schultz $14 million in 2025, and they're paying Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil a combined $51.8 million. And to be clear, I respect any time a team goes all in, truly, but this hasn't gone according to plan. Not even close. And I think in some ways, 2025 is going to be a bit of a cleanup year for this team, especially from a financial perspective. Overall, I think it's been a pretty disappointing season for a variety of reasons. Yes, I know Stephon Diggs tore his ACL and Nico Collins was also out for several weeks, but this team has only allowed 30 or more points twice, and for that matter, 25 or more points just 4 times. They also forced 5 turnovers against the Lions and lost. 4 of their 5 losses have been preventable, and it's been frustrating to watch this team not be able to capitalize in a year where they easily could have. And my biggest fear for this team is that they'll play the Baltimore Ravens in the first round of the playoffs, where the Texans would be the 4 seed and the Ravens would be the 5 seed. And Lamar Jackson is having a great season and quietly has 29 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. And I think the Ravens would beat the Texans, and that would lead to a lot of questions this offseason for Houston. And I don't think they have a bad future ahead of them by any means. I just worry with where they currently are and how exactly they plan to take their next step. The Jacksonville Jaguars are up, and this team's future concerns me for several reasons, and it starts with the lackluster play on the field. Since starting the 2023 season with an 8-3 record, in which they were coming off of a season in which they went 9-8 and won a playoff game, and when they were 8-3, they actually beat the Texans in their second to last win in the 2023 season, and that was a big win for a couple of reasons. The Texans won in the Jacksonville earlier in the year, in week 3, before the CJ Stroud hype train really got going, and they embarrassed them, and Houston won by 20 points, and Jacksonville avenged that loss on the road. But since that win, the Jags are just 4-15, and there's been several low moments. And I know the Azeez Al-Shaair hit on Trevor Lawrence was one of the lowest moments, especially recently, and we are not too far removed from that hit, but there's a couple of things that need to be remembered within the context of that play and with that game. The Jags season was completely gone before that had happened. Now, obviously we feel for Trevor and wish Trevor the best in recovery, but Trevor Lawrence is at this point done for the year. But again, the Jags were already a bad team before that play. It's not like everything just started sliding after that specific play. They were already a bad team. They had several double-digit losses on the year, and this is a team that, again, has a head coach that everyone knows is fired after week 18, and they are not playing good football at all. And they're not even close to playing good football week in and week out. What also scares me with the Jags and their outlook is, per NFL insider Jordan Schultz, right now it looks like Trent Baalke is going to be retained as the team's general manager, and we obviously all expect Doug Peterson to be fired after week 18, but Trent Baalke has been the team's general manager for not 1 or 2 years now, but several years. He was officially named the team's GM back in November of 2020 when they fired former GM Dave Caldwell, and this scares me for several reasons. Trent hired Urban Meyer, which was, as everyone predicted, a disaster, and that was one of the worst rookie seasons a number 1 overall pick could have possibly had from start to finish in Trevor Lawrence. But this will be the Jags' 3rd number 1 pick in 5 years if they select number 1 overall. Which I don't know if it's going to happen at this point because of how bad the Giants and Raiders are week after week, whether they're starting Desmond Ridder or Tommy DeVito. But the point is, the Jags will probably be selecting in the top 5 for the 3rd time in 5 years, in what was supposed to be a transcend as Trevor Lawrence's career has went on, and it's really been anything but that. The Jags have disappointed through countless drafts, and it really starts all the way back in 2020, which was Dave Caldwell's final draft, in which they got next to 0 production. The 2021 draft outside of Trevor Lawrence was okay, and the 2022 draft was a blunder as they took Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson, and that was a selection where really everybody was scratching their head as the pick was made. This team has made countless bad decisions with Trent Baalke as the team's general manager, and if he is heading yet another draft, then I have no choice but to worry about the Jags' future. And that's unfortunate because Jags fans deserve better than what they've received from this franchise over the past couple of years, minus a run in 2022 and an 8-3 start to the 2023 season. Jacksonville being 4-15 since that win over Houston really describes the past 6 or 7 years for this franchise, and I have no confidence with their 2025 draft process if, again, Trent Baalke is the team's general manager. Yes, they selected Brian Thomas Jr., and I love Brian Thomas Jr., and I think he's going to be a perennial 1,000-yard receiver, but unfortunately, Trevor and Brian Thomas are not enough to win the team's games. And what also stinks particularly for the Jags is a lot of the time they select players and they go be productive elsewhere. Look no further than 2019 draft pick Quincy Williams, who became a first-team All-Pro for the Jets, and recently, the Jags also traded tackle Cam Robinson to the Vikings, and Cam is having a really good season for Minnesota since filling in for Christian Darrisaw, who unfortunately tore his ACL and MCL against the Rams. The Jags are a franchise that is disappointed year after year, minus the 2017 run and minus the comeback win against the Chargers in 2022, and I don't know what the recipe for them to get out of this perpetual failure is. I just think the best case scenario for this team is to fire both Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson at the same time, rather than potentially having Trent Baalke head another draft, as the team already wasted the entire rookie window of Trevor Lawrence. And while Trayvon Walker has not been as good of a player as Aiden Hutchinson in the NFL, obviously, Trayvon is not a bad player by any means, so this team effectively wasted not 1, but 2 number 1 overall picks rookie window for 1 playoff win and a comeback in which they got beaten Kansas City the next week. I just have a lot of concerns with this franchise moving forward, and I don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to be a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the next 2 or 3 years to overcome all of these deficits and overcome all of these setbacks due in large part to Trent Baalke's decisions. The Jags have not had a lot of draft impact, at least as much as you would like, and you see that with the results on the field week after week after week. The Jags' future really concerns me, and I really hope that they fire both Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson so that this franchise can have a new tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 41% of people watching are subscribed and helps the channel tremendously. Thank you to DraftKings for sponsoring today's video, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.